Eleanor Whitmore tore the engagement ring off her finger and hurled it clear across the parlor, hard enough to crack the lamp glass and send it rolling beneath the settee. Nathaniel Mercer barely blinked. "Don't make a scene, darling," he said, cool as cream. Behind him stood another woman, the richer one he'd chosen in her place. Eleanor walked out into the summer road with nothing but dust on her hem, then heard hoofbeats behind her that would change every single thing she thought she'd lost. Before this story begins, please hit subscribe and follow Eleanor's journey all the way to the end, and drop a comment telling me what town you're watching from, so I can see just how far her story has carried. Nathaniel Mercer had picked a Tuesday in July of 1818 to do it. A Tuesday when most folks in Cumberland Hollow were out in the tobacco rows or down at the riverbank, and the parlor would be empty of witnesses. Eleanor Whitmore had walked into that house expecting to discuss the wedding flowers. Instead, her fiancé shut the door behind her, set his hands behind his back, like a man about to deliver a business declaration, and spoke the words she would remember for the rest of her born days. "I can't marry you, Eleanor." She did not answer right away. She looked at him the way a body looks at a snake that has only just revealed itself in the tall grass. "Say that again." "Eleanor, please." "Say it again, Nathaniel, plain, so there ain't no mistaking it." He pressed his lips together. His collar was too starched for July. "I said I can't marry you." That was when she tore the ring off. She did not set it down. She did not place it gentle on the table, like some soft-hearted girl in a lady's novel. She yanked it clean off her finger and she flung it. It struck the oil lamp on the side table hard enough to crack the glass chimney clean through, and it rolled somewhere into the shadows beneath the settee, where nobody was going to fetch it any time soon. Nathaniel flinched at the sound. Not at her. "Was that necessary?" he asked. "Don't you," she said, "don't you dare speak to me about what's necessary." "Eleanor." 3 weeks, Nathaniel." "I know." 3 weeks until the minister and my mama is sewing the hem of my dress this very afternoon, and you stand there in your father's parlor and tell me you can't like a man canceling a load of grain, like I'm a hand you're fixing to let go before harvest. He had the decency at least to look at the floor. "It isn't like that." "Then what is it like? Because from where I'm standing, it's exactly that. Exactly that, and worse." He drew a breath. She could see him rehearsing the speech he had practiced. She could hear it in the careful measure of it before he even opened his mouth. "Your father," he said, "has had a mighty bad spring." Eleanor went still. "The flatboats," Nathaniel went on, "the 2 he lost on the Ohio in April, and the warehouse fire in May, and the Cincinnati notes he couldn't cover." "Eleanor, I have tried. I have tried to see a way forward, but—" "You're leaving me," she said soft, "because my daddy had a bad spring." "I am trying to be honest with you." "No." She almost laughed. It came out wrong, sharp and bright, a sound she had never heard in her own throat before. "No, Nathaniel, you are trying to be comfortable with yourself. That ain't the same thing." "Eleanor, how long have you known?" "Does it? How long?" He hesitated, and in that hesitation she saw it all. "Since May," he said finally. "Since May." "Eleanor, I had to be sure. You sat at my daddy's supper table 3 Sundays running after May. Nathaniel Mercer. You held my hand in that garden. You told my mama how the dogwoods would be out for the wedding. You looked me in the face, and you knew." "I didn't know how to tell you." "So you didn't. I am telling you now." "You're telling me now because you've already settled on the next one," she said. "Ain't that right?" He did not answer. That was answer enough. Eleanor took a step back. Her hand went to the table behind her, steadying. The house was quiet in that particular summer way, where you could hear the flies against the glass and nothing else. And somewhere outside, a dog was barking at a wagon wheel. And she thought, this is the exact minute my whole life has gone and split clean in 2, and the world don't even know to stop. "Who is she?" Eleanor asked. "Eleanor." "Who?" He looked past her shoulder. "Miss Caroline Pembroke." Eleanor closed her eyes. Caroline Pembroke, whose daddy owned 400 acres of the best bottom land in 3 counties, whose mama kept a Philadelphia dressmaker on retainer. Caroline Pembroke, who had smiled at Eleanor at the Independence Day supper just 2 weeks past, and asked her so kindly about the wedding menu. "She was at the supper," Eleanor said. Eleanor. "She sat 3 chairs from me and she asked about the cake." "I never meant—" "Don't." Eleanor's eyes opened. "Don't you tell me what you meant. A man's meaning ain't worth a 10 cent once he's done what you just done. You hear me? Not 1 10 cent. Nathaniel took a step toward her. She put a hand up and he stopped as surely as if she had drawn a pistol. "I have one more thing to ask of you," he said. "You have nothing to ask of me." "Please, Eleanor." "You have used up your asking, Nathaniel. Just this." He swallowed. His throat moved. She watched it move and she thought what a strange small thing a man's throat was and how she had once thought she loved the shape of it. "Tell folks," he said, "that the parting was mutual." She stared at him. "It'll be easier on you," he said quickly. "It will. If folks think you chose it too, there won't be the talk. There won't be shame on you," she said. "On both of us." "On you, Nathaniel. Say the true word. On you. Eleanor, be reasonable." "Reasonable." She did laugh then, a short, cracked laugh. "You are asking me, Nathaniel Mercer, to stand in front of every woman in this town and lie for you. After what you just done. You are asking me to protect your good name with my tongue when you didn't have the decency to protect mine with yours. I am asking you to protect yourself. No, you are asking me to do your last dirty piece of work so you can marry Caroline Pembroke next month without a mark on your collar. And I won't." "Eleanor." "I won't, Nathaniel. I won't say one word that ain't true. Not for you, not for her, not for this house. If the town wants to know what happened here today, you go right on ahead and tell them yourself, and you see how the telling sits in your mouth." He went pale. She liked that he went pale. She was not proud that she liked it, but she liked it. "Where is your hat?" she asked him. Your hat, Nathaniel. Fetch it." "Why?" "Because you are going to walk me to the door." "Eleanor, the carriage, let me call for the carriage. I'll send you home. You will not. It's near 3 miles to your daddy's place." "I know how far it is." "The heat." "I know how far it is, Nathaniel." Her voice did not rise. That was the thing. It went quieter and quieter, and it cut. "I will not sit in a carriage belonging to the man who threw me over this afternoon. I will not owe you 1 more minute of kindness. I will not owe you the ride home. Do you hear me? Eleanor, walk me to the door." He did. He walked her to the door like a mourner at a burying, and he opened it for her, and he stood there in the frame, and he said one more time, weak as watered milk, "Please tell them it was mutual." She stepped out onto the porch. She did not turn back. The sun was high, and the road was pale with dust, and Eleanor Whitmore, 24 years old, of decent family, and suddenly of no prospects whatsoever, began to walk. She did not cry. That was the part that would surprise her later when she turned it over in her head. She had always thought if such a thing ever happened to her, that she would be wrecked. She had always thought she would fold up like a wet handkerchief. Instead, she walked. She walked past the Mercer gate, and past the split-rail fence, and past the old white oak where she had once stood on a Sunday evening and let Nathaniel Mercer kiss her knuckles and promise her a life. She walked past the turn where the river road met the post road. She walked with her hands at her sides and her chin up because her mama had taught her that a woman who is being watched must never, never drop her chin, and Eleanor Whitmore knew down to the soles of her boots that she was being watched. If not by eyes, then by God. And God wasn't fixing to look away from her today. Her mind went in circles. 3 weeks. My dress. My mama's hem. My daddy's face when I tell him. My daddy. Oh Lord. My daddy. Her father, who had spent the spring trying to save what he could of the shipping business and the warehouse and the notes. Her father, who slept 4 hours a night. Her father, whose hair had gone gray at the temples. In 2 months' time, her father had been counting on this marriage. Not because he was greedy, because he was tired, because he had a daughter to see settled before the creditors came. Because Nathaniel Mercer's land and Nathaniel Mercer's name had been the one piece of good news at the supper table for half a year. I will have to tell him. She walked faster. I will have to walk into that kitchen, and I will have to tell him that his daughter has been set aside like a pair of out-of-style boots, and I will have to watch him understand what it means for us. The dust rose around her hem. The sun pressed down on the crown of her head. A wagon passed her going the other way, and the driver, old Mr. Fowler, who had known her since she was a baby, tipped his hat and slowed his horse. Miss Whitmore. Good afternoon, Mr. Fowler. You walking by yourself, ma'am? I am, yes, sir. He frowned. In this heat. It's a fine day for walking, Mr. Fowler. Thank you kindly. He did not believe her. She could see that he did not believe her. But he was too polite to press, and she was too proud to accept, and so he tipped his hat again and clucked his horse on, and she kept walking. He will tell his wife will tell the sewing circle. By supper tomorrow the whole county will know I walked home alone from the Mercer place on a Tuesday afternoon. It didn't matter. Let them know. Let them all know. She would not buy Nathaniel Mercer's peace with a lie, not if the whole of Kentucky sat on her head. She had gone maybe a mile and a quarter when she heard the hoofbeats behind her. Not a wagon. A carriage. A heavy one by the sound 4 horses, not 2. And the wheels were running smooth and fast, the way wheels only run when a rig has been kept up by a man with money and men to spend on it. Eleanor did not turn around. She kept walking. The carriage slowed as it drew even with her. She heard leather creak. She heard a man's voice, not the driver's, say something short, and the horses came to a full stop in the road beside her. She still did not turn. Miss Whitmore. That stopped her. It was a voice she knew the way a body knows the sound of a storm coming over a ridge from a distance by reputation, by the way other people went quiet when it started. She turned. Jonathan Hale had stepped down from the carriage. He was a tall man, broad across the shoulders, in the way of men who had spent years carrying weight they did not speak of. His hair was dark and cut plain, and there was a scar along his jawline that ran from the corner of his mouth near to his ear, a scar folks said he had earned at the Battle of the Thames against the British and Tecumseh's men in the fall of '13. He wore no hat in the July sun. He was looking at her hem, which was gray with road dust, to the knee, and at her bare hand, where the ring had been, and at the line of her mouth, which was set. He did not tip his hat. He did not smile. He did not fumble for polite words. He said, "Did Mercer throw you over today, ma'am, or did he just go and make the worst mistake of his entire life?" Eleanor stared at him. She did not know what she had expected him to say. She had barely known what to expect of him, ever. Jonathan Hale did not come to suppers in Cumberland Hollow. Jonathan Hale did not pay calls. Jonathan Hale sat up at his big house on the bluff over the river and received the men of the county one at a time in his study by appointment, and what was spoken in that study did not get repeated elsewhere. Folks called him the Iron Man of the Ohio. Folks said he owned the flatboats and the landing and half the notes on half the farms. Folks said he had killed 7 men in the war and had not flinched once, and he was asking her on a July road a question nobody else in the county would have dared to ask out loud. "Mr. Hale," she said. "Ma'am, that is not a question a gentleman asks a lady." "No, ma'am, it isn't." "Then why are you asking it?" "Because," he said, "I do not have the time today to be a gentleman, and I reckon you do not have the time today to be protected from the plain truth. Am I right about that?" She did not answer. He waited. He was a man who knew how to wait. She could feel it coming off him, a stillness that was not patience, exactly more like the stillness of a thing that had learned young, that the one who spoke first usually lost. "Mr. Hale," she said finally, how do I know what, ma'am?" That he threw me over. That's what you said." "I know because I'm the reason." She stopped breathing. "I beg your pardon. I am the reason Nathaniel Mercer broke your engagement this morning, Miss Whitmore. I would rather you heard it from me on this road than from some washwoman at the well tomorrow. May I speak plainly? You already are. Yes, ma'am. I suppose I am. He did not move closer. He stayed where he was, one gloved hand resting on the carriage door. Nathaniel Mercer has been coming to my office for 6 months, asking me to refinance his father's debts. I have been refusing. 2 weeks ago, he understood I was going to keep refusing. A week after that, he went calling on Jeremiah Pembroke's daughter. Today, he made his choice. His jaw set. It was not a choice about love, ma'am. It was a choice about money. I wanted you to know the shape of the thing before the county started telling you what shape it was. Why? Eleanor said. Would you bother to tell me? Because I don't hold with a man who puts a woman on a road in July with dust to her knees so he can save his own skin. Mr. Hale. And because I have a proposition for you, Miss Whitmore. One I expect you will not wish to hear on a public road. But I would be obliged if you would hear it all the same. She looked at him. She looked at the carriage behind him and the 4 good horses and the driver who was studying the middle distance like a man trained not to hear. She looked at the road stretching back toward Cumberland Hollow, and the road stretching forward toward her father's house and her father's face and the kitchen and the telling. She thought of Nathaniel Mercer saying, "Tell them it was mutual." She thought of Caroline Pembroke asking about the cake. She thought of 3 miles of dust still to walk, and the sewing circle, and old Mr. Fowler tipping his hat, and the whole slow grinding weight of a county deciding what a jilted woman meant. "Mr. Hale," she said. "Ma'am?" "You are the most feared man in this valley." "I have heard that said, yes, ma'am." "And you want to make me a proposition on a public road." "I want to make you a proposition in the carriage, Miss Whitmore, which is cooler than the road, and which is private, and which is, I would venture, no less safe than walking the next 2 miles alone after what has just been done to you." He paused. "The choice is yours. I will not press it. But I will tell you one thing before you decide." "What thing?" Jonathan Hale looked her full in the face. His eyes were gray, not cold, not warm, steady. "Nathaniel Mercer," he said, "thinks he threw away a girl this morning who came without a dowry worth having. I believe he threw away the only woman in 3 counties with the spine to refuse to lie for him. And I believe, ma'am, that before the summer is out, he is going to understand the difference in public and in full." Eleanor Whitmore stood very still on the road. The dust settled around her skirt. The sun pressed down. Somewhere in a hayfield, a boy was calling to a dog, and the world was going right on about its business as if nothing in it had changed at all. She lifted her chin. "Mr. Hale," she said, "I would be obliged if you would open the carriage door." Jonathan Hale opened the door himself. He did not hand her up. He stood aside, let her climb in on her own 2 feet, and only when she was seated did he swing up behind her and pull the door to. The driver clucked, and the 4 horses moved. "Where am I going, Miss Whitmore?" "Home, Mr. Hale, my father's place. The yellow house past the 2nd crossing." "I know the house." "You know a great many things, it seems." "I do, ma'am. That is part of the proposition." She folded her hands in her lap so he would not see them tremble. "Say it then." "I mean to marry you, Miss Whitmore." Eleanor laughed. It came out of her before she could stop it. A short, stunned sound, the sound of a woman who has been struck twice in one afternoon and cannot for the life of her make the second blow fit the first. "Mr. Hale." "Ma'am, you have seen me twice in your life before today. Once at the Lexington Fair 2 years back. Once at the Christmas service in the Episcopal Church last winter. I counted. I counted because I could not help counting a man like you when he stood in a room." "I am aware, ma'am." "Then you will be aware that what you just said to me is either a cruel joke or the act of a man who has lost his senses in the heat, and I cannot determine which. It is neither." "Then what is it?" Jonathan Hale leaned forward. His gloved hands rested on his knees. He looked at her the way a banker looks at a ledger he has already balanced in his head. "I am 35 years old, Miss Whitmore. I have no wife. I have no heir. I have a house on the bluff that my aunt runs because I have no woman of my own to run it. I have money enough to buy every farm between here and Louisville, and I have exactly one weakness in this county, which is that the wives of the men who owe me money do not know how to behave toward me in a parlor. They are afraid. Their husbands are afraid. Their daughters are afraid. And a man who is feared in a study, ma'am, is a man who cannot do business in a parlor. Do you follow me? I follow you. I need a wife who is not afraid. And you decided on me, Eleanor said. At what point exactly? At the point, ma'am, when Nathaniel Mercer came into my office 6 weeks ago and told me plain that he could not continue the engagement because his intended had no dowry to speak of. I asked him what sort of woman would marry a man like him without a dowry. He said a proud one. He said it like it was a fault. Eleanor's jaw set. I have been watching you, Miss Whitmore, in the way a man watches any asset the market has misjudged. I have asked after you. I have spoken to your father's bookkeeper. I have spoken to the minister. I know that you keep your father's accounts. I know you speak passable French because your mother taught you. I know you have read your father's library end to end. I know that when the warehouse burned in May, you were the one who made the list of what was saved before your father had stopped weeping. That, Eleanor said very low, is not a thing a gentleman would say aloud. No, ma'am, but it is a thing a man offering you a lawful marriage ought to say aloud, because you deserve to know you are not being chosen out of pity. She was quiet. The carriage rocked. Outside, the afternoon was going on, being July oblivious. Mr. Hale? Ma'am. You are telling me you have been what? Studying me. For 6 weeks. 7, ma'am. Like a piece of property. Like a partner, he said. Property does not get asked. I am asking. That stopped her. She turned her face to the window a moment. She would not let him see what his phrasing had done. Like a partner. Property does not get asked. She had not realized until that second how badly she had needed to hear that particular arrangement of words in her life. What are the terms, she said. Say again, ma'am. The terms, Mr. Hale. You do not offer a woman marriage on a public road in July without terms. What are they? Plain, he said. I pay every note outstanding against your father's name by Friday. I keep him in his house. I put the warehouse back up by fall. And in exchange, you stand beside me. You run my household. You host my table. You sit at the head of my parlor. You speak to the wives of men who owe me money, and you make them feel that a Hale wife is a woman worth being seen with. You give me one heir within 5 years if the Lord permits it, and if he does not, you will not bear the blame of it. Those are the terms. She looked back at him. That is not the whole of the terms. No, ma'am, it is not. Then finish. You will have, Jonathan said, an allowance of $2,000 a year in your own name to dispose of as you see fit. You will have full authority over every hiring and dismissal beneath our roof. You will keep the household books yourself, or appoint whom you please to keep them, and no man, myself included, will countermand you in them. If ever I raise my voice or my hand against you, you may take the carriage and the allowance and go, and I will not send a man after you. Those are the terms. Eleanor stared at him. Mr. Hale? Ma'am. Why, she said, why are you offering me so much? He was quiet a long moment. Because, he said, I watched a man this morning throw you out of a parlor for the price of 400 acres, and it has been a considerable while since anything made me as angry as that did. I would rather not examine why. I would rather, ma'am, simply fix it. Something moved in her chest that she did not have a name for. She did not let him see it. I will need until tomorrow, she said. You will have until tomorrow. And I will need to speak with my father. Of course. And I will need to know one more thing before I agree. Name it. Nathaniel Mercer. Jonathan Hale's eyes did not move. What of him? You said before that he was going to understand the difference in public before the summer is out. I said that, yes. I will not be your instrument of revenge, Mr. Hale. No, ma'am. I mean it. I will not marry a man who wants me chiefly to embarrass another man. I have been somebody's convenience once today. I will not be it twice. He nodded slowly. Understood. Then tell me plain. Is this a marriage, or is it a weapon? Jonathan Hale looked at her for a long, steady count. It is a marriage, Miss Whitmore. The weapon is a pleasant side benefit. I will not lie to you and say otherwise. But I do not require Nathaniel Mercer's humiliation for my own satisfaction. I require your presence in my house. The rest is the county's business. She swallowed. Then stop the carriage at the second crossing, she said. I will walk the last half mile. I do not want my father to see your rig at the gate until I have spoken to him. Done. He tapped the roof. The carriage slowed. Eleanor stepped down alone. She did not look back. She did not dare. She walked the last half mile with her head up, and she walked into her father's kitchen, and she found him at the table in his shirt sleeves, with a ledger open in front of him, and his face in his hands, and she said, "Daddy." Samuel Whitmore lifted his head. He read her face in one look. Fathers do. "Oh, child," he said. "Daddy, sit up. Listen to me. Eleanor, he did, Daddy, this afternoon. Sit up." "Oh, child, oh no, oh Lord in heaven. Daddy, sit up." He sat up. She had never spoken to her father in that tone in her life. She was as surprised as he was. "Daddy, listen. A man has made me an offer of marriage on the road home, and I need you to hear me through before you say one word. A man." Her father's face was gray. "Eleanor, child, a man on the road, what sort of—" "Jonathan Hale, Daddy." Samuel Whitmore went entirely still. "Daddy? Eleanor?" Daddy breathed. Eleanor, child. You cannot—" "I can, Daddy. He is Eleanor. The man has a reputation, I know what he has, Daddy. The stories about him in the war, the men he has broken in that office of his, the soul. I know, Daddy. Eleanor. I have seen grown men walk out of that house on the bluff with their hands shaking. I have seen Eleanor. I will not trade you into that house to save mine. I will not. I would rather lose every acre. I would rather the creditors take the last stick of furniture. I would rather— Daddy? I would rather die. Eleanor, do you hear me? I would rather— Daddy, listen." He stopped. Eleanor sat down across from him. She took his hand. His hand was thinner than it had been at Easter. She had not let herself notice before this moment how much thinner it had gotten. "Daddy, listen to me. The man offered me terms. He offered me my own money in my own name. He offered me the running of his house. He offered me the right to leave if he ever raised his voice to me. He looked me in the face on the road. 'Daddy,' and he said, 'Property does not get asked, I am asking. Do you hear me?' He did not come at me like a buyer. He came at me like a partner. That is the word he used." Her father's eyes filled. "Eleanor, and I did not say yes, Daddy. I said I needed to speak to you first." "Oh, child." "But I am going to say yes. Eleanor, I'm going to say yes, Daddy, because this morning I found out that the man I was going to marry for love was actually marrying me for a dowry I did not have. And I have spent the walk home asking myself what the difference is between selling a daughter for love and selling a daughter for money. And I have decided, Daddy, that the difference is whether the daughter gets to hold the pen when the contract is written. And today, for the first time in my life, a man has offered to let me hold the pen." Samuel Whitmore put his face in his hands and wept. She let him. She did not move. She held his other hand on the table, and she let her father weep, because a man who had been carrying a warehouse fire and a lost flatboat and a daughter's ruined wedding on his shoulders in one summer was entitled, she reckoned, to weep at a kitchen table for 5 minutes without his daughter trying to fix him. When he was done, he looked up. "Child. Daddy, if that man ever does one thing to make you regret this, I know, Daddy. I will walk up that bluff with a rifle in my hand, Eleanor. I do not care how old I am." "I know you will, Daddy." "Do you believe him?" She thought about it. "I believe," she said slowly, "that he has not yet decided to lie to me. And I believe I will know the day he does." Her father laughed a wet, broken laugh. "That is my girl." The answer came back from the bluff before sundown the next day. Jonathan Hale sent not a letter, but a woman. Abigail Hale was 60 years old and had been widowed twice, and she arrived at the Whitmore gate in her own small chaise with a black silk bonnet and a spine like a ramrod. And she walked into Eleanor's parlor and she said, "Child, stand up. Turn once. Again. Slower. Yes, your shoulders are good. Your hair is a disaster. Jonathan said you had a tongue in your head. Let's hear it. Ma'am? Say something cutting." "I beg your pardon, Mrs. Hale, but I have only just met you." Abigail Hale laughed a short, pleased bark. "Oh, you'll do. You'll do fine. My nephew has an eye for the right horse, I will give him that much. Sit down, child. We have 3 weeks before the 4th of July assembly at Colonel Patterson's, and we have a great deal to undo before then." 3 weeks, ma'am. 3 weeks, child. That is when you will be presented as the future Mrs. Hale. That is when every woman in this county will see the cut of your dress and the set of your chin, and that is when the story stops belonging to Nathaniel Mercer and starts belonging to you. Now, what has he been saying? Ma'am? Nathaniel, child, Nathaniel, what has he been telling the town? Eleanor hesitated. I do not know what. I know. Of course you do not know. A jilted woman is always the last to be told what she is supposed to have done. He is saying, child, that you threw the ring at his head in a fit of temper. He is saying you were hysterical. He is saying that his mother is relieved. He is saying through the Pembroke girl's aunt that the break was sorrowful, but necessary, because you were never quite of sound temperament. That is what he is saying, child, and he is saying it at every tea table between here and Lexington, and he has 3 weeks' head start. Eleanor's hands went cold. That is a lie, ma'am. Of course it is a lie, child. A lie is a faster horse than the truth always. We are not going to chase the lie. We are going to outrun it. Now stand up again. Show me how you walk into a room. Mrs. Hale. Walk, child. Eleanor walked. No. Again. You are walking like a woman who has been apologized for. Walk like a woman who is about to be apologized to. Yes, that. That is the walk. Remember it. That walk is your whole defense for the next 3 weeks. The 3 weeks went fast, and they went slow at once. Eleanor did not leave the house. Abigail did not let her. Let them wonder, Abigail said. Let the rumor run itself out of breath. When you walk into that ballroom on my nephew's arm, child, every woman in the county is going to have to revise her story in under 10 seconds, and the ones who cannot revise fast enough will be the ones we remember. On the evening of the assembly, Abigail herself dressed Eleanor's hair. She did not speak while she did it. When she was done, she took Eleanor's face between her 2 cool, dry hands, and she said, "Child, look at me." "Ma'am, my nephew is not a soft man." "I know it, ma'am. He was not a soft boy either. I raised him some. I know the shape of him. He does not give what he gave you on that road lightly. Do you understand what I am telling you?" I think so. Then I will say it plainer. He did not choose you because you were convenient. He chose you because he has been a lonely man for a long time, and he saw somehow on one July afternoon that you were the first woman in 10 years he did not have to frighten into the room with him. Do not waste that child. It is rarer than you know. Eleanor could not answer. Abigail patted her cheek once briskly and turned to fetch the gloves. The Patterson house was full when they arrived. Word had gotten out that Jonathan Hale was attending Jonathan Hale, who had not set foot at a public assembly in 4 years. Word had gotten out that he was bringing a lady. Word had not yet gotten out which lady. The music was going when they stepped through the front door. The music stopped. It did not stop all at once. It stopped the way a conversation stops in a courtroom, one instrument at a time, as the players looked up and saw and understood and forgot their fingering. The fiddle faltered. The flute stopped. The room turned. Jonathan Hale did not raise his voice. He did not have to. "Colonel Patterson," he said, and his voice carried, "Mrs. Patterson, I thank you for the invitation. Permit me to present Miss Eleanor Whitmore of Cumberland Hollow, who has done me the very great honor of consenting to become my wife." The silence that followed was the kind that rings. And then, from across the room near the punch table, Eleanor saw him, Nathaniel Mercer, in a pale coat, with Caroline Pembroke on his arm, holding a glass of punch halfway to his mouth. He had gone the color of milk. He did not set the glass down. He could not seem to remember what the glass was for. His mouth opened and did not close. Caroline Pembroke turned to him and said something, and he did not hear her. He was looking at Eleanor, and Eleanor, in that instant, understood something she would carry to her grave. A man who throws a woman away, in private, never expects to stand in a lit room 1 month later and watch her be claimed out loud by a man he is afraid of. Jonathan's gloved hand settled at the small of her back. Light. Steady. Not possessive. A promise. Eleanor Whitmore lifted her chin the way her mama had taught her, and she looked Nathaniel Mercer in the face across that crowded room, and she did not nod, and she did not smile, and she did not look away first. He looked away first. The fiddle somewhere remembered itself and picked the tune back up. The wedding was 3 weeks after the assembly. It was small by Jonathan Hale's choice. Colonel Patterson's minister Abigail as witness, Samuel Whitmore, giving his daughter away in the front parlor of the big house on the bluff with his eyes wet and his spine straight. There was no feast. There was a single toast. Jonathan said the vows plain, and Eleanor said them plainer. And when the minister told him he might kiss his bride, Jonathan laid his mouth against her forehead, instead brief as a prayer. And Eleanor understood in that instant that the marriage she had walked into was not going to be the kind she had walked out of. By the first week of September, Eleanor Whitmore Hale had become something the county did not quite have a word for. She was not a girl anymore. She was not quite the sort of wife the other wives knew how to approach. She sat at the head of Jonathan's long table twice a week when he had men to supper, and she learned fast which of those men carried notes with her husband, and which ones carried grudges, and she learned which of their wives were worth the trouble of charming and which ones were not. Abigail stood at her elbow the first month. By the 6th week, Abigail was not standing at her elbow anymore, and when Eleanor remarked on it, Abigail only said, "Child, a horse does not need the lead once it knows the road." Jonathan kept every word of the bargain he had made on that July carriage ride. Every word. Her father was in his house. The warehouse was being rebuilt. The $2,000 was in her name at the bank in Lexington, and when she wrote a draft against it for a new roof for her parents' kitchen, Jonathan did not ask her a single question about it. He signed nothing. He countermanded nothing. He was in every practical thing the man he had promised to be on the road. He was also in every other thing a stranger. He slept in the adjoining chamber. He knocked before he entered her sitting room. He called her Eleanor in private and Mrs. Hale in public, and he called her nothing at all when they were alone at breakfast, which was most mornings. He read the papers. He ate what was put before him. He said, "Thank you, Mrs. Hale," and "A fine morning, Mrs. Hale," and "I will be at the landing until supper, Mrs. Hale," and he left. The 4th week, Eleanor set her coffee cup down one morning and said, "Jonathan?" He looked up. "Am I doing something that displeases you?" "Ma'am?" "You will not look at me above the chin, sir, for 4 weeks. I would like to know what I have done." The lines around his mouth tightened. "You have done nothing, Mrs. Hale." "Then why, Mrs. Hale?" He set his paper down. "I married a woman I had known for an afternoon. I am a man who has not had a woman in his house in 10 years who was not my aunt or a kitchen girl. I am a man, ma'am, who has learned to keep his hands to himself, because the last time I did not a boy in a red coat at a river crossing in 1813 learned a thing I cannot unteach him. Do you understand what I am telling you? I do not know. Then I will say it plainer. I am afraid, Mrs. Hale, of putting the weight of a man like me onto a woman who has very recently been put under the weight of a man who did not deserve her. I will look at you above the chin when I am sure I have the right to." Eleanor sat very still. "Mr. Hale." "Ma'am." "That is the most foolish thing I have heard spoken at this table." He blinked. "The right," she said, "was given to you in a church 3 weeks past in front of God and my Father. You do not have to earn it twice." "Mrs. Hale." "But if you mean the other thing, if you mean my trust, sir, that is not given in a church, and you are right not to assume it. Take your time with that one. I will take mine." He looked at her then, fully, above the chin, and then some. And he did not speak for a long moment, and when he did, he only said very low, "Thank you, Mrs. Hale." She went back to her coffee. Her hands were shaking. She did not let him see. It was 10 days after that conversation that the parcel came. Henry the houseman brought it to her in the morning room. He had the look on his face of a man who had wanted very badly to open a thing before giving it to a lady and had not allowed himself. "Ma'am?" "Henry. This come by a boy on a mule, not the post. Boy wouldn't give his name. I asked twice. Set it down." "Ma'am, I—" "Set it down." "Henry, thank you." He set it on the small table and did not leave. "Thank you, Henry." "Ma'am, I don't like the weight of it." "Thank you, Henry." He went. Eleanor sat looking at the parcel a long moment before she moved. It was small, brown paper, no writing on the outside, tied with plain string. She did not call for her husband. She did not in that instant know why she did not call for her husband, only that something in her hands knew the shape of a thing before her mind did, and her hands said, "Not yet, not him, not yet." She untied the string. Inside the paper was a small wooden box, the sort a cooper's boy could make in half a day. Inside the box was a yellow songbird. It had been dead some hours. Its neck had been broken neatly, with the kind of neatness a man uses when he wants a woman to understand that a thing was done on purpose. Folded under the bird was a piece of paper. Eleanor did not touch the bird. She lifted the paper out with the tips of 2 fingers. "Tell your husband the Ohio vote costs more than he can afford. Tell him the next bird will not be feathered." She read it twice. She folded it. She put it in the pocket of her apron. She closed the box. She wrapped the box again in its own paper. She carried the parcel herself to the kitchen, and she told Cook plain, "This goes in the stove. Now. Every piece of it." "And Cook, you did not see it." "Ma'am." Cook. "Ma'am, I did not see it." "Thank you." She went back to the morning room, and she sat down, and she put her hand over her mouth, and she discovered that she was not going to cry, which surprised her considerably. She thought very fast. She thought about the Ohio vote. Jonathan had spoken of it twice at supper, a federal measure on wartime supply contracts, a thing that was going to cost certain men a great deal of money if it passed, and Jonathan had the ears of 3 state legislators who were going to tell their congressmen how to think about it. If Jonathan pulled his weight off the measure died. If the measure died, certain men kept certain contracts. She had listened. She had not spoken. She had remembered. She thought about telling him. She thought about not telling him. She thought about the look in his face at breakfast 10 days back. "I am afraid, Mrs. Hale." A man who had said that aloud to his wife was not a man who would sit quiet for a threat against her. He would get on a horse. He would go to the landing. He would go to the men he suspected, and he would put his hands on them, and somewhere between the landing and the house, somebody would shoot him in the back, and she would be a widow by Thursday. She did not tell him. Instead, she went and found Henry. "Henry." "Ma'am." "I want 4 more men on the gate by sundown, and I want them paid from my own account, not Mr. Hale's. I want the stable boy sleeping in the tack room, not the loft. I want the kitchen shutters closed an hour earlier. I want the dogs loose on the grounds after dark. And Henry." "Ma'am." "I want my husband not to know any of this. Is that understood?" "Ma'am." "Is that understood, Henry?" Henry swallowed. "Yes, ma'am." It held for 9 days. On the 10th day, Jonathan walked into her sitting room in the evening, and he closed the door behind him, and he said, "Mrs. Hale." She looked up from her book. She knew from the way he closed the door that she had been found out. "Mr. Hale." "Why," he said very quiet, "are there 4 men on my gate that I did not hire?" "Sit down, Jonathan." "Why are the dogs loose, Mrs. Hale?" "Jonathan, sit down." "Why does Henry flinch when I walk past him?" "Because I told him to flinch if he was about to lie to you." "Sit down." He did not sit down. He came across the room to her. He did not touch her. He stood a yard off, and he said, "What came in this house that you did not tell me about?" Eleanor closed her book. She told him. All of it. The parcel. The bird. The note. The stove. She did not soften a word of it. She watched his face while she spoke, and she watched the thing she had been afraid of happen. His jaw set, his eyes went flat, his hand went to the edge of the mantel and closed on it hard enough that she heard the wood complain. Eleanor. Jonathan. You kept that from me. I kept it from you for 10 days. You kept a threat on my wife from me for 10 days. The threat was not on your wife, Jonathan. The threat was on your vote. If I had come to you with that paper 10 days ago, you would have ridden out of this house before supper, and you would have gotten yourself killed in the dark, and I was not willing to be widowed over a yellow songbird, Jonathan. Do you hear me? His jaw worked. Eleanor. Don't. Eleanor, look at me. Don't, Jonathan. Eleanor. She looked at him. She saw white under the tan of his face. His hand on the mantel was not steady. The Iron Man of the Ohio was not steady. Do you have any notion, he said very low, of what it would do to me to come home in the dark and find you the way they meant you to be found? Eleanor could not breathe for a second. Jonathan? Do you? I thought I was protecting. You were Eleanor. You were also telling me without meaning to the shape of something I have been trying not to know for 3 weeks. What are you telling me? He closed his eyes. That I am a fool, Mrs. Hale, and that I have been a fool since a Tuesday in July. And that if you had been hurt in this house because I was too slow to speak it aloud, I would not have recovered from it. That is what I am telling you. She stood up. She did not cross to him. She was not ready, and he was not ready, and both of them knew it. Then we are, she said, steady, 2 fools together, Jonathan Hale, because I did not tell you for 10 days for the same reason you have not looked at me above the chin for 6 weeks, and if we are going to keep being foolish at each other, we are at least going to keep being foolish in the same house. Are we agreed? Agreed. Good. Now sit down and tell me who sent the bird. He sat down. He told her. He told her the names of 3 men in Philadelphia who stood to lose $40,000 apiece if the Ohio measure passed. He told her the name of a Senator, Rufus Bell, of whom she had heard, who was very likely brokering between them. And then he told her a thing that made the blood go out of her face. There is a 4th name. Jonathan. I did not want to say it to you. Say it. The man who carried my schedule to Philadelphia, Eleanor. The man who knew which nights I would be at the landing and which nights I would be at home. That man has been in your parlor. That man has sat at your father's supper table. That man has put a ring on your finger. Eleanor's hand went to the arm of the chair. Nathaniel. I do not have proof, Mrs. Hale. I have a letter in a hand I am fairly sure I know. I have a pattern. I do not have proof. He would not. He would, ma'am. For the same reason he threw you over in July. For money. A weak man does not become strong when the money runs thin. He only finds a new pocket. She sat with that. Then we are not safe in this house, she said. No, ma'am, not for a little while. Where do we go? I have a farm at Burnt Fork. It is 30 miles inland. My father kept it. Nobody knows of it but Abigail and my foreman. We will go there tomorrow before first light, and we will stay until I have wrung Bell's name out of the man who sent that bird. Jonathan. Ma'am. If Nathaniel Mercer is in this, then he will answer for it, Eleanor. But not tonight. Tonight we ride. They went before dawn. 2 carriages, 4 outriders, Jonathan mounted alongside rather than in. Eleanor rode in the second carriage with Abigail, who did not fuss and did not speak, and only held Eleanor's hand between both of hers the first 6 miles. They were 22 miles out when they came to the covered bridge at Miller's Pass. The lead outrider slowed, stopped, raised a hand. Jonathan wheeled his horse and rode forward. Eleanor heard him say, "Stand off the bridge." She heard the outrider say, "Sir, the beams." She heard Jonathan say, "Off it, now, everyone off it." And then the first shot came from the trees. It took the outrider off his horse. He hit the planks of the bridge with a sound Eleanor would hear in her sleep for a year. Jonathan's horse screamed. Jonathan was off it and running. Before Eleanor understood, he had been hit. Or not hit. She could not tell. She could not tell. And the second shot came, and the third, and the fourth, and Abigail grabbed the back of her neck and shoved her down onto the floor of the carriage hard enough to bruise. "Down, child." "Abigail. Down, child, down." There was shouting outside, men's voices. Not her men's voices. Eleanor counted. 4 voices. 5. She could not count past 5 because the carriage rocked hard, and a horse went down in the traces, and the whole rig pitched sideways, and Abigail's head struck the door frame with a sound like a struck gourd, and Abigail went limp across her. "Abigail, Abigail, Abigail." Abigail did not answer. Eleanor lay under the weight of a 60-year-old woman on the floor of a tilted carriage, and she heard Jonathan's voice outside shouting names. The foreman's name, the second outrider's name. And the names were not answering him back. And then she heard a thing that froze her. She heard a rider coming hard from the tree line with something burning in his hand. And she heard Jonathan Hale shout, not an order this time, but her name, just her name, Eleanor. She moved Abigail, gentle as she could. She crawled across the tilted floor to the far door, and she got it open, and she fell out onto the planks of the bridge on her hands and knees, and her hands came down in a slick of blood that was not her own, and she lifted her head, and she saw at the far end of the bridge her husband on one knee, with his left arm hanging wrong and his pistol empty in his right hand, and she saw coming down the road at a hard gallop a man with a pitch pine torch raised over his head, and the clear intention of throwing it onto the bridge her husband was kneeling on. There was a rifle in the boot of the overturned carriage. Jonathan had showed her how to load it the second day of the marriage in the back garden, because he had said a woman in his house ought to know. She had fired it 3 times badly at a fence post. Abigail had laughed at her. Eleanor scrambled back into the carriage on her hands and knees. The rifle was there. The powder was there. The ball was there. Her fingers did not work. Her fingers did not work, and then her fingers worked because they had to. She came back out onto the planks of the bridge, and she brought the rifle up, and she could not hold it level. Her arms were shaking. Her breath was coming in short, hard pieces, and she could hear a high, thin sound in her ears that she realized distantly was her own throat, and the rider with the torch was 30 yards out. 2015. And Jonathan was not moving. Jonathan was not moving, and she thought, "Oh God, oh God, oh God." And she put the bead on the rider's chest, and she squeezed the way Jonathan had taught her. The rifle kicked her so hard she went backward onto the planks. When she sat up, the rider was on the ground. The torch was in the ditch. It guttered and went out in the wet grass. Jonathan had turned his head. He was looking at her. Across 20 feet of bridge and 2 dead horses and the body of a man she had shot. He said very hoarse, "Mrs. Hale." "Jonathan." "Are you hit?" "No." "Abigail." "Alive. Her head." "Come to me, Eleanor." She went to him. She went across the bridge on her knees because her legs would not hold her up, and she reached him and she took his face in both her blood-smeared hands, and she said, "You stupid, stupid man, you stupid man, you got off your horse." I had to see the beams. "You got off your horse, Jonathan." "Eleanor." "You got off your horse with a torch rider coming." "Eleanor, Eleanor, stop, look at me." She stopped. "When the carriage went over," he said, I thought they had... I know. I know Jonathan." "Eleanor, I was not afraid of dying on that bridge." "Jonathan, I was afraid of leaving. Do you hear the difference?" "I hear it. I should have said it 6 weeks ago at breakfast." "You are saying it now." "Eleanor, say it, Jonathan." "I did not marry you," he said, "because I needed a woman in my parlor." "I know. I married you because a woman walked on a July road with mud to her knees and would not lie for a man who did not deserve her, and I have not had a quiet hour in my own chest since. And if you had been on that bridge when the fire hit it, I would not have been a man anymore, Eleanor. I would have been a thing that walked and drew breath and was not a man." Eleanor could not speak. She leaned her forehead against his hard, and she felt his blood on her face, and her blood on his, and she felt his good arm come up around her shoulders, and hold her there, as if he was afraid she was made of something that could blow away in a wind. And somewhere behind them, Abigail groaned, and was alive. And somewhere off in the tree line, a horse that did not belong to them was running itself out into the dark. And Jonathan Hale kissed his wife on a ruined bridge, with his left arm hanging useless, and his pistol empty in the ditch, not soft, not polite, not the way a man kisses a woman he has been studying above the chin for 6 weeks, but the way a man kisses a woman he has just by the grace of God, and one shaky rifle, not lost. When he could speak again, he said against her mouth, "Home, Mrs. Hale." "Home," she said, and she meant the big house on the bluff. And she meant something else too, that she did not yet have the word for, and neither did he, and both of them knew it, and neither one of them on the planks of that bridge was fool enough to try to name it out loud. They did not make it to Burnt Fork that night. They made it 4 miles past the bridge to a miller's house, whose owner took one look at Jonathan's arm and sent his son on the fastest horse in his barn to find a surgeon. Abigail was laid on the miller's wife's bed and did not wake until morning. The outrider on the bridge did not wake again at all. Eleanor sat in the miller's kitchen with dried blood on her wrists and listened to the surgeon set her husband's arm in the next room, and Jonathan did not cry out once, and she learned in the listening that there were worse sounds than the sounds a man makes when he is hurt. There were the sounds a man makes when he has decided on principle not to let his wife hear him hurting. When the surgeon came out, he said, "Ma'am, the bone is clean. He will keep the arm." "And my aunt?" "She will know her name by dinner time tomorrow, ma'am, or she won't. I cannot tell you which yet." Eleanor nodded. She did not weep. She discovered sitting in that miller's kitchen that she had gone past the country where weeping was useful, and she was not certain she was ever going back. They stayed at the mill 4 days. On the 2nd day, Abigail knew her name. On the 3rd day, she knew Eleanor's name, and called her with perfect dryness, "Child." On the 4th day, Jonathan's foreman came riding up from the landing with his hat in his hand and a folded paper in his coat, and he would not speak in front of the miller's family, and Eleanor took him into the yard. "Mr. Sayers?" "Ma'am." "What have you got?" "The writer, ma'am, the torch writer. Somebody in Covington knew him. Name of Coburn. Works out of a whiskey house on the river. Took the job for $40 through a man in Cincinnati who handles certain correspondence for certain gentlemen in Philadelphia. Rufus Bell. The Cincinnati man works for a firm that keeps Senator Bell's accounts, ma'am. I cannot prove the senator's hand on the money yet, but his shadow is on it. And the other names on the bridge. 2 Kentuckians, ma'am, paid the same day out of the same purse. One is in the ground, the other is talking." "Talking what?" "Talking everything, ma'am. He wants a doctor and a bottle and a ride to St. Louis. I expect, ma'am, we can accommodate him." "Accommodate him, Mr. Sayers? Write down every word he says. Sign it. Have the man sign it. Get 2 witnesses to sign it. And Mr. Sayers." "Ma'am." "Do not bring that paper to my husband until I have read it first. Is that understood?" Mr. Sayers' mouth twitched. "Ma'am, Mr. Hale ain't going to like that." "Mr. Sayers, my husband is lying in that house with a broken arm because he got off his horse to look at a beam. He is not at present the most level-headed man on this property. Is that understood?" "Yes, ma'am." "Thank you." On the 5th morning, they went home not to Burnt Fork, but back to the big house on the bluff. Jonathan had insisted. He had said over the miller's breakfast table with his arm in a sling and his eyes still bruised from the fall, "Eleanor, if we go to Burnt Fork now, we tell every man in 3 counties that the Hales can be frightened into hiding. I will not give them that." "Jonathan?" "I will not." "Your arm." "My arm will heal in the Bluff House, as well as it will at Burnt Fork, and in the Bluff House the county will see it heal. That matters, Eleanor. That matters more than you know." "I know what it matters. I am only saying you will do better if you are not on a horse for a week." "Agreed." "Agreed." "Agreed, Mrs. Hale. I am a teachable man." "Since when?" "Since a Tuesday in July, ma'am." She did not let him see the thing that did to her. They came back up the bluff road on the fifth afternoon, and Henry met them at the gate with the 4 men Eleanor had hired still standing behind him, and Henry's face broke when he saw Jonathan's sling, and Henry did not say a word, but took the horses and led them in. Abigail walked on her own 2 feet into the house, leaning on Eleanor's arm. Jonathan refused to be helped up the porch steps, and paid for that refusal by going white around the mouth at the top of them, and Eleanor did not remark on it, and neither did anybody else. The letter from Senator Bell came on the 7th day. It was a fine, heavy paper, sealed in red wax, delivered by a uniformed rider from Cincinnati. The rider waited, which was the first insult. The rider had been instructed to wait for a reply. Eleanor opened the letter in her sitting room with Jonathan beside her. My dear Mr. Hale, word has reached this office of the grievous accident that befell your party at Miller's Pass. Be assured, sir, that the sympathies of the Commonwealth travel with you and with your good lady wife, whose courage in the incident has already become the subject of admiring talk as far east as this desk. The roads of our young country remain, alas, a dangerous business. One prays that the coming session may at last address the condition of our bridges, so that the good men of commerce may travel them without fear. Your voice, sir, on the matter of the Ohio measure would be sorely missed in the debate. It is the prayer of your obliged servant that you will recover in time to lend it. With the warmest regards, Rufus Bell. Jonathan read it twice. He set it down on the small table. He did not speak for a long moment. Eleanor. Jonathan. He is telling me he did it. He is telling you he did it, and that he expects you to withdraw from the vote, yes. He is telling me he can do it again. That too. Eleanor. Do not get on a horse, Jonathan Hale. Eleanor. Do not get on a horse. I will say it every hour of every day for a week if I have to. Do not get on a horse. You will ride to Cincinnati with your arm in a sling and a pistol in your good hand, and he will have you shot on the quay in front of 50 witnesses and call it a robbery, and I will be a widow in a black dress by Sunday. Do not get on a horse. Then what, Mrs. Hale? What do you suggest? Eleanor picked up the letter. She held it up between 2 fingers. I suggest, Mr. Hale, that a man who writes a letter this vain is a man who will walk into a room if he thinks the room has been arranged to admire him, and I suggest that we arrange a room. Jonathan looked at her, slowly. Eleanor. Yes? Go on. The Patterson House is hosting the Ohio Trade Supper on the last Friday of the month. Every man of note in 3 counties will be there. The senator has been invited. He has accepted. I wrote to Mrs. Patterson yesterday, and she confirmed it. You wrote to Mrs. Patterson? I did. Yesterday? Yes. Before we came home. From the Miller's kitchen, Jonathan. On the morning of the 4th day. He laughed. It was short and startled, and it hurt his ribs. She could see it hurt his ribs, and he did not stop. Mrs. Hale. Mr. Hale. I married above my station. You did, sir. Keep that in mind. They went to the Patterson supper on the last Friday of the month. Jonathan's arm was out of the sling, but still weak. He wore a plain black coat. Eleanor wore gray silk, not black, which would have suggested mourning, and not colored, which would have suggested celebration. Abigail had chosen it. Gray, child, Abigail had said. Gray is the color of a woman who has not yet decided whether to forgive the room. They walked into the Patterson parlor at 7:15, and for the second time in 4 months, a room went quiet at the sight of Eleanor Whitmore Hale. The first face Eleanor saw was Caroline Pembroke's. Caroline came across the parlor before anyone else could. She was pale under her rouge. She laid a gloved hand on Eleanor's wrist, brief a touch a woman gives another woman at a funeral, and she said low and fast, Mrs. Hale, I did not know. Eleanor looked at her. Miss Pembroke. I did not know, Mrs. Hale, about the bridge, about any of it. I would not. Miss Pembroke is your husband-to-be in this room. Caroline's mouth worked. Yes, he is by the window. Has he been himself, Miss Pembroke, these last 2 weeks? No, Mrs. Hale. Has he been sleeping, Miss Pembroke? No, Mrs. Hale. Then you know, Miss Pembroke, as well as I do what has been done, and by whom. And I will thank you to step aside now, and not speak to me again this evening, because I do not wish to punish you for a thing you are already punishing yourself for. And if you stand here another half-minute, I may have to." Caroline Pembroke stepped aside. Nathaniel Mercer was at the window. He did not turn. He had known the moment the room went quiet who had walked in. He could not bring himself to turn. Eleanor did not go to him. She went on her husband's good arm straight to Senator Rufus Bell. The senator was holding court by the fireplace with 3 gentlemen of Cincinnati and a bottle of claret. He was a big man, red-faced, amiable in the way that men who have done a great deal of harm learn to be amiable in public. He saw Eleanor coming, and he rose to his feet with every appearance of delight. "Mr. Hale, Mrs. Hale, my dear sir, my dear lady, what a joy, what a deliverance! The whole Commonwealth has been holding its breath." Senator: "I hope, my dear sir, that my poor letter reached you in some small comfort." "It reached me, Senator. I trust the arm is mending." "Mending well, Senator, thank you." "And Mrs. Hale?" "Mrs. Hale, the courage of it, ma'am. The whole parlor has been speaking of nothing else." "Senator Bell," Eleanor said. "Ma'am, might I trouble you for a word in Colonel Patterson's library? A private word. Before supper. I understand the Colonel's cook is a quarter of an hour behind, so there is time." The senator's smile did not shift. His eyes did. "My dear lady." "It is a matter, Senator, touching on the Ohio measure. I believe you will wish to hear it privately." "My dear, of course, of course. Lead the way." They went into the library. Jonathan, Eleanor, the senator, and Mr. Sayers, who had been standing very quietly by the door with a leather folder under his arm. Eleanor closed the library door herself. Senator Bell took a chair without being offered one. He crossed his legs. "Mrs. Hale, I am all attention." Eleanor did not sit. "Senator, I will not waste your time. Mr. Sayers?" Mr. Sayers opened the leather folder and laid a paper on the library table. That paper, Senator, is the signed and witnessed statement of one Jedediah Coburn of Covington, who was paid $40 on the 10th of this month to set fire to a covered bridge at Miller's Pass with my husband on it. Mr. Coburn names in that paper the man in Cincinnati who paid him. Mr. Sayers. Mr. Sayers laid a second paper down. That paper, Senator, is a sworn affidavit from a clerk at Cooper & Rhodes in Cincinnati, which firm you may recognize as they keep your personal accounts. The clerk swears that the $40 was drawn on a private account to which only 3 men in the country have signing authority. You are one of the 3, Mr. Sayers. Mr. Sayers laid a third paper down. That paper, Senator, is a letter in your hand dated 2 weeks ago, directing the Cincinnati agent to attend to the Ohio matter at his discretion. I will not ask how it came into our possession. I will only say, Senator, that the man who copied it for us is at present in a hotel in Louisville, under a name that is not his own, and that the copy has been compared to 3 other letters of yours on file at the Cincinnati post office, and it is the opinion of a handwriting master in Lexington that the same man wrote all 4. The senator did not move. Mrs. Hale. I am not finished, Senator. Mrs. Hale, these documents. I have 3 copies of each, Senator. One is in this room. One is with my husband's attorney in Lexington. One is in a sealed packet at the Bank of the United States branch in Philadelphia, addressed to the Attorney General with instructions that it be delivered in the event that any person in this household meets with any further accident of any kind. Are we clear, Senator? Bell's face had gone the color of wet ash. Mrs. Hale. Are we clear, Senator? Mrs. Hale, you are a young woman. You do not understand the arrangement of... Senator, Jonathan said, and it was the first word he had spoken since they had come into the library, and he said it soft. My wife asked you a question. Bell looked at him. Jonathan did not blink. Jonathan, she realized, was not going to blink. Jonathan was prepared, she understood, to sit in that chair until sunrise, if it took sunrise, and Bell understood it too. Mrs. Hale. Bell said very low, what is it that you want? I want your resignation from the Senate in writing on Colonel Patterson's desk before the supper bell rings. I want it on the grounds of ill health. I want you to announce at the table tonight that you are retiring to your estate in Virginia to see out your days. And I want that announcement delivered with good cheer, Senator. Because a man who announces his retirement with bad cheer makes the room ask why, and we do not wish the room to ask why, do we? Mrs. Hale, my husband will cast his vote on the Ohio measure as he sees fit. You will not be in the chamber to hear it. You will be on a road to Virginia. You will stay in Virginia, Senator. You will not write to the men in Philadelphia again. You will not write to the men in Cincinnati again. You will not write to anyone, in fact, who has ever paid $40 for a piece of bridge work, because if you do, Senator, the packet in Philadelphia will be opened on a Monday morning, and by Monday afternoon, every newspaper from Boston to New Orleans will know the price of a yellow songbird. Is that understood? Bell stared at her. You are a... Do not, Senator, finish that sentence. I beg you. I have been called things by better men than you this year, and I am in no humor. Bell's jaw closed. Is that understood, Senator? Understood. Good. Mr. Sayers will bring you pen and paper. You will write now. You will eat supper after, and you will leave Senator on the first coach out of Cincinnati in the morning. She turned for the door. Mrs. Hale, Bell said, and there was something naked in his voice now, something she had not expected. May I ask, only ask, how a woman who 6 months ago was being put out of a parlor by Nathaniel Mercer came to sit in a library and dismantle a United States senator? Eleanor paused at the door. She looked back at him. Senator, she said, the answer to that question is the only thing I am taking from this room that I do not intend to share. Good evening. She went out. Jonathan followed. Mr. Sayers followed with the folder. Behind them in the library, Senator Rufus Bell sat very still for a long moment, and then he picked up the pen. In the hallway before they reached the parlor, Jonathan stopped her with his good hand. Eleanor. Jonathan? The packet in Philadelphia. What of it? We do not have a packet in Philadelphia, Mrs. Hale. We will by Tuesday, Jonathan. The courier left yesterday. He stared at her. Mrs. Hale? Mr. Hale, I am going to go on being teachable. See that you do. They came back into the parlor. The senator did not follow for some minutes. When he did, his face was composed, and he made his announcement at the supper table with admirable good cheer, and 3 gentlemen from Cincinnati looked at their plates in a particular way, and everyone drank to the senator's health. And it was not until after the pudding that Eleanor finally crossed the room to the window where Nathaniel Mercer had been standing all night. He turned before she reached him. Eleanor? Mr. Mercer. Eleanor, I have to tell you. Not here, Mr. Mercer. Colonel Patterson's morning room. Now. He went. She went after him. Jonathan did not follow. Jonathan had seen her face and had chosen wisely to let his wife do this one alone. In the morning room, Nathaniel closed the door and turned, and he was already shaking. Eleanor. Eleanor, I swear to you on my mother I did not know what they meant to do. I only sold them the schedule. Eleanor, I only sold them the nights I did not. Nathaniel. I needed the money, Eleanor. I have debts you do not even know the half of. I needed Nathaniel. I would never. Eleanor. I would never have. Nathaniel, stop. He stopped. He was weeping. He was weeping the way a child weeps when the child has been caught and knows fully that he has been caught. She had not seen him weep since his brother's funeral years ago. She realized, once thought she would marry this man. Nathaniel. Eleanor, please. I am not going to destroy you. He looked up. Eleanor. I am not Nathaniel. Hear me out. It is not mercy. I want you to understand that. It is not mercy. Then, I thought on the ride over here tonight about a great many ways to end you. I thought about the bank. I thought about the land. I thought about your mother who has been kind to me. I thought about Caroline Pembroke, who is a better woman than you deserve. And I decided, Nathaniel, that I am not going to do any of it. Do you know why? He shook his head. He could not speak. Because you are not worth it. His face crumpled. You thought, Nathaniel, that you threw away a girl in July for 400 acres. You did not throw away a girl, Nathaniel. You threw away a life. You threw away the life of a woman who would have loved you through a bad spring and a lost warehouse and every creditor from here to Louisville because she was that kind of fool, and that fool is gone now. I killed her on the road back to my father's house in July. You will not see her again. And the woman standing in front of you, Nathaniel, is not angry at you anymore. Do you understand that? Do you understand, Nathaniel, that you are not even worth my anger? Eleanor, you will marry Caroline Pembroke. You will live in her father's house. You will raise your children on her family's money. You will sit at tables for the rest of your natural life with men who know Nathaniel, who know what you did on a July afternoon and what you did for $40 on a letter to Cincinnati. And none of them will ever say it out loud, because the county does not say such things out loud. But they will know. Every man in every parlor will know. And you will sit among them, and you will feel it, Nathaniel, every hour of every day, for the rest of your life, and that Nathaniel Mercer is the price I have set. Not your death, not your ruin, your name, kept, intact, hollow, for 50 years. Is that understood? He was on his knees now. She had not told him to kneel. He had gone down on his own. Eleanor. Stand up, Mr. Mercer. A man does not kneel to a married woman in Colonel Patterson's morning room. It is not seemly. He stood up. She went to the door. Eleanor, one thing, please. She paused. Does Mr. Hale, does he make you? Good night, Mr. Mercer. Eleanor, does he? Good night, Mr. Mercer. She closed the door behind her. Jonathan was waiting in the hall. He did not ask. He offered her his good arm. She took it. They walked back through the parlor and out to the waiting carriage without speaking to anyone. And Colonel Patterson himself saw them to the door with his hat in his hand, and the Patterson driveway was lit with lanterns, and the summer air was soft, and Eleanor discovered climbing into the carriage that she was not going to cry about Nathaniel Mercer tonight, or any other night ever again, and the discovery sat in her chest, quiet and clean as a swept hearth. Jonathan settled beside her. The horses started. Mrs. Hale? Mr. Hale. You did not need me in that room. No, Jonathan. You have not needed me in any room for some time, I think. No. He was quiet. Jonathan. Ma'am? That was never the arrangement. No, ma'am. The arrangement was that I would stand beside you. I remember the arrangement. Then stand beside me, Mr. Hale. Stop measuring the ground under my feet. It holds. I have tested it. He laughed very soft in the dark of the carriage. He took her hand with his good one, and he held it the rest of the way up the bluff road, and neither of them spoke, and neither of them needed to. They came up the bluff road a little before midnight. Henry was on the porch with a lantern. Abigail was in the hall in her dressing gown with her hair in a long gray braid, and she took one look at their faces and said, Well. Senator Bell retires at dawn, ma'am, Jonathan said. And Nathaniel Mercer. Will live, Eleanor said, quietly. Abigail nodded once. Then I am going back to bed. Eleanor, child, there is soup on the stove. Jonathan, do not climb the stairs without her. You will overbalance on that arm, and I will not come down to pick you up off the landing. Yes, ma'am, Jonathan said, meek as a boy. Abigail went back up the stairs. Eleanor looked at her husband. Soup, Mr. Hale? Mrs. Hale, I am not hungry. You have not eaten a proper supper, Jonathan. You picked at the Patterson pudding. I watched you. I was occupied. You were furious. I was furious, yes. Come to the kitchen. They went to the kitchen. Cook had gone to bed. The stove was banked, and the soup was warm, and Eleanor ladled 2 bowls and set them on the scrubbed pine table, and they sat across from each other like 2 tired people who had not quite understood yet that the thing was over. Jonathan ate 3 spoonfuls and set the spoon down. Eleanor. In the morning room tonight with Mercer. What did he ask you at the end, when you were going out the door? Eleanor did not look up from her soup. Eleanor. He asked me, she said, whether you made me happy. Jonathan went very still. And what did you tell him? I told him good night, Mr. Hale. Eleanor. I did not answer him, Jonathan. It was not his to ask, and it was not mine to give. Would you have answered him if it had been? She looked up. Jonathan Hale, if you are going to ask me a question, ask it straight. I have had a long evening, and I have not the patience for a man who approaches a thing sideways. His mouth moved almost a smile, almost not. He set his good hand flat on the table between them. All right, Mrs. Hale. Straight. Do I? Do you what? Do I make you happy? The kitchen was quiet. The stove ticked. Somewhere out on the bluff, a whippoorwill was going at it in the dark. Jonathan? Yes. I did not marry you to be made happy. I know that. I married you because my father needed the warehouse, and my name needed the roof, and you were the only man in 3 counties who asked me instead of bought me. I know that too. So the question is not well put, sir. Then put it better for me, Mrs. Hale. I am a slow man tonight. Eleanor was quiet a long moment. Ask me, she said, whether I would do it again. He drew a breath. Eleanor, would you do it again? Knowing what I know now. Knowing what you know now. Knowing about the bird. Knowing about the bridge. Knowing about the arm you nearly lost, and the night we sat in a miller's kitchen, and the morning Abigail would not wake up and the look on the senator's face. Knowing all of it. All of it, she set her spoon down. Jonathan Hale. I would walk out of Nathaniel Mercer's parlor on a July afternoon every day for the rest of my natural life if the road at the end of it still had your carriage on it. That is what I would do. Is that plain enough for you, sir? Jonathan Hale put his face in his good hand. For a second, Eleanor thought he was laughing. Then she understood he was not. She got up. She went around the table. She stood beside his chair, and she laid her hand on the back of his neck, and she waited, because she was not a woman to rush a man through a thing he had not let himself feel in a great many years. Eleanor. Yes. I sat in that library tonight, and I watched you dismantle a United States senator with 3 papers and a story about a packet in Philadelphia, and I thought, that is my wife. That is my wife, who 6 months ago walked a road alone in the dust, because a man who was not fit to carry her gloves had sent her off on foot. Jonathan. And I thought, Eleanor, that I have been a coward in this house. You have not. I have. At my own breakfast table, for 6 weeks. Jonathan, I have kept my hands to myself. Eleanor and I have kept my eyes above the chin of you, and I have told myself that it was kindness, and it was not kindness, it was fear. It was a grown man's fear that if he reached for the one good thing in his life, he would break it with the reaching. Jonathan. I am tired, Mrs. Hale, of being afraid of my own wife. She turned his face toward her. Then stop being afraid, Jonathan Hale. I am not a songbird. I am not a thing that breaks in a wooden box. I know that now. Good. Eleanor? If I kiss you in this kitchen at midnight with a sling on my arm and a bowl of cooked soup between us, will you hold it against me in the morning? If you do not kiss me in this kitchen at midnight, Jonathan Hale, that I will hold against you in the morning. He laughed a short wet sound, and then he kissed her. Not the way he had kissed her on the bridge with blood on them both, and death a foot off, but the way a man kisses his wife in a kitchen after a long war, slow and sure as a man who has decided to come home and stay home. When he drew back, she said very quiet, Jonathan. Yes. The terms. What terms? The terms of our marriage. What of them? They were drawn up for a woman who needed protection from a county and a man who needed credibility in a parlor. Yes. That is not what we are, Jonathan. Not anymore. No, ma'am. I would like to redraw them. Say the terms, Mrs. Hale. I will sign. She did not smile. She said it straight the way she had been saying everything straight since July. I want to be asked, Jonathan, not for the running of the household, and not for the guest list, and not for the accounts, for you. I want, sir, to be asked for you. Not your money, and not your name, and not your protection, you. what you are thinking, what you are afraid of, what you want from a morning before you go to the landing, what you hoped for when you were a boy, what you hope for now. I want that, Jonathan, and I will give it back. Those are the terms. Jonathan Hale was quiet a long moment. Eleanor. Yes, those are harder terms than the first ones. I know they are. Harder than an allowance in your name at a bank in Lexington. I know, Jonathan. I am going to be bad at them, Eleanor. Fair warning. I know you are going to be bad at them. So am I. We will be bad at them together, and we will get less bad with time, and that is the bargain, Mr. Hale. Do you take it? I take it, Mrs. Hale. Good. Finish your soup. He finished his soup. She finished hers. They went up the stairs together, and he did not climb to the adjoining chamber that night, and he did not knock at her sitting-room door the next morning, and the small domestic readjustment of it was not remarked upon by Abigail at breakfast, though Abigail, buttering her toast, wore an expression of such pointed innocence that Eleanor had to hide her face behind her coffee cup for fully a minute. The fall moved in slow and steady. The warehouse went up with a new roof in October. Samuel Whitmore came up the bluff road one Sunday afternoon in November with his hat in his hand and sat on his son-in-law's porch and would not come inside, and Jonathan went out and sat on the porch with him and did not speak for an hour. And when they came back inside, Eleanor's father kissed the top of her head in the hall, the way he had kissed it when she was 8 years old, and he said, "Child, I am all right now. I am all right." And she understood without him saying that it had been the first time he had been able to say it aloud since the April the flatboats went down. Nathaniel Mercer married Caroline Pembroke in December. Eleanor did not attend. She sent a silver salver with her compliments and a card in her own hand, civil and brief. And that was the last correspondence between the two houses for the rest of the winter. Mr. and Mrs. Mercer were seen at the Christmas service. They were seen at the January assembly. They were seen, in short, everywhere a married couple of their standing ought to be seen, and they were received everywhere with the exact degree of politeness that a county extends to a couple about whom it has decided privately a thing it will never say out loud. Abigail reported from her sewing circle that Caroline had gone thinner and sharper about the mouth. Eleanor did not ask further. She did not wish to know further. She discovered through the winter that the name Nathaniel Mercer had gone from meaning the man who broke me to meaning simply a man whose name I no longer need to say, and the change had taken so quietly that she could not pinpoint the week it had happened. Senator Bell retired to Virginia and did not write to Cincinnati again. The Ohio measure passed in February by 3 votes. Jonathan Hale's was the first of them. On the morning of the vote, a cold, clear Wednesday, Jonathan came down to breakfast and sat opposite her and said over the edge of his coffee cup, "Mrs. Hale." "Mr. Hale, I have a thing to tell you that I have been a coward about since November." Eleanor set her coffee down. "Jonathan, it is not," he said quickly, "a bad thing. It is a thing, Mrs. Hale." "Then tell me the thing, Jonathan." "I have bought the Mercer place." She blinked. "You have the Mercer place, the house, the land, the 400 acres, the whole of it. The father went under in October. Nathaniel could not hold it. The Pembroke money kept them in Caroline's father's house, and they are not coming back to it. The bank wrote to me in November. I have been sitting on the letter." "Jonathan, I did not tell you because I did not know, Eleanor, whether you wanted it gone or kept. It is yours to decide. I have not signed. The papers are on my desk." Eleanor was quiet a long moment. "Jonathan." "Yes." "You have been sitting on a decision about the house where Nathaniel Mercer broke our engagement for 3 months because you did not want to choose on my behalf." "Yes, ma'am." "Yes. You understand, sir, that 3 months ago you would have signed the papers and told me at supper and considered the matter closed." "I do understand that, Mrs. Hale." She reached across the breakfast table and took his hand. "Burn it." "Ma'am, not the house, Jonathan. The parlor, the front parlor where he said the words. Pull it down, take the walls out, put a window where the wall was, make the room a different room. Do not leave that parlor standing as it was, Jonathan. I do not want the parlor. The rest of the house can go on being a house. The parlor I want gone. That is my answer." Jonathan squeezed her hand. "Mrs. Hale, I will have the wall out by April." "Thank you, Jonathan." "And the land." "The land," Eleanor said, "we give to my father, in his name, not mine and not yours, his. Let him farm it, or let him lease it, or let him sell it for scrap, I do not care which, but the 400 acres that Nathaniel Mercer threw me over to get Jonathan, I want those 400 acres in Samuel Whitmore's name by the end of the month. Will you do that for me?" "I will do that today, Mrs. Hale." "Then the matter is closed." "Closed, ma'am." He kissed her knuckles and went to the landing. The spring came. The dogwoods came out. Eleanor's mother cried at the sight of the deed when Samuel brought it to the yellow house in March. Samuel himself did not cry. Samuel sat down on the back step of his own kitchen and laughed long and loud and unbroken, and it was the first time Eleanor had heard her father laugh that way in over a year, and she stood in the doorway and she let herself quietly have it. In May, Eleanor discovered she was with child. She did not tell Jonathan for 3 days. She was not hiding it exactly. She was sitting with it. She wanted 3 days of knowing the thing before anyone else in the world knew it, because it was the first thing in her married life that had not come at her out of a ruined parlor, or a carriage on a public road, or a letter sealed in red wax. The first thing Eleanor realized that was not a response to somebody else's move. It was hers. She wanted 3 days. On the third evening, she told him in the sitting room after supper. He did not speak. "Jonathan." "Eleanor." "Say something." "I do not." "Jonathan Hale, say something, you are frightening me." He got up. He crossed the room. He knelt by her chair. He was 35 years old, and he had fought at the Battle of the Thames, and he had commanded men, and he had faced down a United States senator in a library, and he went down on one knee by his wife's chair in the sitting room of the big house on the bluff, and he laid his forehead against her knee, and he did not speak for a long time. "Jonathan." "Eleanor." "If the Lord takes this child, I want you to know before the fact that I will not hold you to the terms of the contract you signed in July. I will not hold you to a single word of it. Heir or no heir. Do you hear me?" "Jonathan Hale, I do not care about an heir, Eleanor. I thought I did. I was wrong. I care about the woman in this chair. I care about her in this chair, whether she is carrying my child or she is not, whether she ever does or she never does. I want you to know that before there is a child in the house, because I do not want you ever for 1 hour to believe I am watching you for a delivery. Do you hear me?" Eleanor could not speak for a second. "Jonathan." "Yes, you are a better man than you were in July." "I had help, ma'am." "You had considerable help." "I am aware of it." "Stand up, Jonathan. My knee is going to sleep." He stood. He pulled her up into his good arm. He held her against his chest, and he said into her hair, "Eleanor." "Yes." "Thank you." "For what, Jonathan?" "For being the woman on the July road." "Jonathan." "For walking into Colonel Patterson's library with 3 papers and a story about a packet in Philadelphia." "Jonathan." "For telling me to burn the parlor." "Jonathan." For all of it, Eleanor. For the whole year of it. For every day of it. Thank you." She held him a long time. The baby, a boy, came in early February of the next year. Samuel Whitmore held his grandson within an hour of the boy being born, and Samuel wept openly, and Abigail, who did not weep at anything, laid a hand on Samuel's shoulder and did not take it off for some minutes. Jonathan did not hold the child until after Eleanor was asleep. Eleanor knew this because Abigail told her the next morning over a cup of broth. Abigail told her that Jonathan had sat in the rocker by the fire for 2 hours with the boy on his good arm, and had not spoken a word, and had not looked away from the child's face once, and that when Abigail had finally come in and asked if he wished to lie down, Jonathan had only said very low, "I did not know, Aunt Abigail. I did not know a person could feel this." The boy was named Samuel Jonathan Hale, after his 2 grandfathers. Samuel Whitmore cried again. Everyone had by then gotten used to Samuel Whitmore crying. It was considered by the household an improvement over the spring of 18. Eleanor did not think often after that about Nathaniel Mercer. She thought of him now and then the way a body thinks of a road it used to travel as a fact of geography, neither grieved nor wanted. The Mercers left the county in 21. Caroline's family had pulled them east to Philadelphia to try the dry goods business, and Eleanor heard through Abigail that the marriage was not a happy one, and she heard it with neither satisfaction nor pity, only with the flat, clean acknowledgment of a woman who had long since laid that particular ghost to rest. She thought often, however, of the July road. She thought of it in the mornings when she came down to breakfast and found her husband already there with the paper and a cup of coffee poured for her. She thought of it in the evenings when Jonathan carried their son on his shoulder up the hall. She thought of it at Christmas and at Easter, and on the anniversaries of the bridge and the bargain, and she thought of it, above all, on the warm summer mornings when the dust rose on the bluff road, and she could see in her mind's eye, as clear as the day itself, a woman with mud to her knees and a ring no longer on her hand, walking, toward a future she had not yet been offered. That woman, Eleanor sometimes said to herself, had not known what she was walking toward. That woman had believed she was walking toward the end of a life. She had been walking, in fact, toward the beginning of one. Nathaniel Mercer had thought on a Tuesday afternoon in July of 1818 that he was setting aside a girl without a dowry to save his own future. He had, in fact, that afternoon set in motion the single event that would lift Eleanor Whitmore out of a small county and a small marriage and a small life and place her before the summer was out at the head of a great house, and before the year was out at the side of a man who had learned because of her, and only because of her, how to lay down a weapon he had been carrying since the war. Nathaniel Mercer had thought he was throwing away a girl. He had thrown away, in truth, the best thing that was ever going to cross his threshold, and he would know it every day of his life, and he would never once have the courage to say it aloud, and that in the end was the whole of his punishment and the whole of his story. Eleanor Whitmore Hale was not a warning. Eleanor Whitmore Hale was a woman who had walked one July afternoon out of a parlor that did not want her, and into a life that did, and she had built that life with her own two hands and her own straight spine, and her own refusal from the first minute to the last, to lie about what had been done to her, or to flinch from what she had done in answer. A weak man once told her to tell the county her ruin was mutual. The county, in the end, told a different story entirely, and that story, reader, is the one you have just heard.